we live?
Hi,
We're good.
everyone. We're very excited to talk about the launch of Opill. I'm Meredith Horton, VP of Consumer Health and Wellness at GoodRx. We are launching partnerships with non-prescription companies, and I will turn it over to Evelyn next.
Great. Evelyn Furia, Senior Director of the Opill team. Very excited to talk about the launch and all the great things we're doing.
And I'm Melissa Campbell. I am EVP and U.S. Client Lead for Publicis Unlimited, which is the bespoke solution that we've created to support Perrigo.
Oh, great. So we'll dive right in. So, Evelyn, what is Opill and why does it matter now?
That is a great question. So Opill is America's first and only over-the-counter birth control pill.
Woo!
So for the first time in our country's history, no permission is needed to access the birth control pill.
Yes.
Anyone of any age, any identity can go into a store today and in the sexual health aisle can buy the daily birth control pill with Opill. So we are very excited to be building the Opill brand, but more excited about creating this entirely new category of over-the-counter birth control pills.
And so far, how has been the response in the market?
Response has been overwhelming and positive from healthcare professionals who are so excited about the access and convenience that having the pill over the counter creates, from people who have been advocating for the pill to be over the counter for decades. It's just an incredible opportunity. Opill is a progestin-only pill, which means it does not contain estrogen. So it is safe for people who are breastfeeding, for people who are at risk of blood clots. Really opens up just new opportunities in the way that people access birth control. No one needs to go and get a prescription, and it's 98% effective when used as directed, and is just really going to create a whole new way of getting birth control in the U.S. for generations of women and people coming up. So very exciting.
When you were thinking about your go-to-market strategy, what were some of the immediate challenges and opportunities that you saw initially, and then how has your perception changed since launch?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things kind of before we get into the go-to-market strategy that I think are important for people to understand, which is first that almost half of all pregnancies in the U.S. are unintended. So simply just having Opill available over the counter and people having greater access to birth control for people who can't get to a doctor or haven't felt safe at a doctor or just don't have health insurance. This just creates so many more pathways for people to take control of their reproductive health. And even those who do have a prescription for birth control and have been accessing it for years, a third of people have had trouble getting back into their doctor to get that prescription refilled. And so that just creates so much more opportunity and importance on accessing the pill in a timely and convenient manner. So when we think about how we go to market, it's really important to think about first of all, how do we make people aware that Opill exists? We are continuing to work on that every day and learning a lot, but we have so much opportunity. And not only making sure people understand what Opill is, but again, that there's now this entirely new way of accessing birth control, and that you can just go into any store today and purchase it. So when we think about the marketing, it was also really important to think about how do we reach women at different stages of their contraception journey. So there are people who have been taking the birth control pill for years, are used to going to the doctor to get a prescription. How do you talk to those versus someone who's trying to decide for the very first time what their contraceptive method is going to be and if the birth control pill or Opill is even right for them? And then there's everything in between. People who come on and off when they're making the decision to have children, when they're breastfeeding, things like that. So thinking about people across the different stages of the journey is really important to think about how do we talk to them, how do we reach them, and what are their needs at that moment. The other thing that we also had to think about is the sexual health aisle is is sometimes not a place people want to spend a lot of time, right? You get in and you get out. In fact, in my Walgreens in Jersey City, it's like tucked behind the makeshift vaccination room that they set up. So it's like you got to actually go behind the little like box to get to it, and it's so. And then people want to get in and out as fast as possible because it's an aisle they're often embarrassed to be in. I don't know how many people have sort of spent 10 minutes reading all the box of labels on condom boxes and lube and things like that, but that's where we are. And then in addition, sexual health is also a high theft category, and so over a third of retailers lock up a lot of their products in sexual health. So again, when we think about how we create access for people and convenience for people, these are things we had to think about as well, as making sure people understand where to get the product, how to get the product, how easy it is to get it online, have it shipped to you, and really think about the right time and moment where people are making different stages in their decision on whether or not to have children and try to get pregnant. So
one thing that we noticed before launch and probably happening still now is, I'm going off script a little bit, is a lot of misinformation and disinformation about the product itself. How were you combating that before the launch, or were you? And then how are you combating that now?
Yeah, so there's certainly, there's a lot of, as you said, a lot of misinformation about contraception out there. And the way in which we started with that before we launched was really, we have a coalition of healthcare professionals, experts. We worked with advocacy groups that are part of the Free the Pill Coalition that helped get Opill, the FDA approval for over-the-counter, and working with those folks who are experts in healthcare and contraception and can really start helping us with some of those messages. So we've partnered with those folks, including healthcare professional influencers, to help us get the word out and so forth. We also know that when people are choosing whether or not to go on birth control, there's going to be a lot of questions. There's going to be questions about how it will affect them, how they take it, what kind of side effects will they have. And as I mentioned earlier, Opill is a progestin-only pill, meaning it's estrogen-free. Most people in the US who are on a birth control pill are on what is called a combination pill, which contains estrogen. So the way you take a progestin-only pill and the side effects from a progestin-only pill can be different. And people have a lot of questions and they need to do a lot of education. So once we launched, we wanted to make sure we were in some of those places where people would be seeking that information. And that's where things like our partnership with GoodRx came into play, because we were able to provide resource and drive awareness of Opill in an environment where people are trying to get that information and that education to decide if this is the right contraception method for them.
I think that the trusted element is big, especially because those who are searching, maybe first-time users, they need that trust and that confidence that this is the right method for them, which is actually a good segue into bringing Melissa and Publicis Unlimited into this mix. When Evelyn brought the challenges and opportunities to your team, what were some of the initial thoughts that you had about your strategy, channel mix, some of the things that you want to do at launch, and then how you're evolving now?
Yeah. So, this was unique for us for a bunch of reasons, not the least of which is we'd launched brands before, but we were launching a category, right? So it took a little bit more, there were a lot more unknowns. But we started with the basics that we always start with, which is understanding our audience. So Evelyn talked about the range of people. Working with the team at Perrigo, divided up our audience into really 4 key segments. Those being, first, the point of market entry, women who are just first becoming sexually active and looking for effective birth control. Then on the other end of the spectrum, there were those women who are currently on an RX, which is likely a combo pill, right? It's probably not a progestin only. In the middle are those folks who are not new to the category, not on prescription, but are using something else, generally either condoms or sometimes withdrawal or fertility. So they're kind of taking a chance or taking their temperature. So we really spent a lot of time working through who are the different segments, and then once we used data to identify them, we were able to really dig into their media behavior. So we were able to understand, okay, where are the best places to reach them? In many cases, because these are all women, typically in the 18 to 44 range, they were in similar places. And really digital and social were the things that rose to the top. So those were critical during our launch. We did consider other channels, including some linear at the very beginning. But yeah, digital and social were critical to what we were doing here.
And one thing I want to mention, another thing that we've done at launch, and hopefully you'll see more of, is we formed a partnership with the WNBA, which is also part of our media strategy as well. But we found as we were getting ready to launch that the values that we have for the brand with Opill and the values of the WNBA that they have in terms of health equity really aligned and meshed well together. And so we were able to form that partnership at a great time when the interest in women's sports is continuing to elevate, and think
because
about,
everybody watches women's sports.
Yes. How do we bring our brands together and help educate the next generation of women that over-the-counter birth control is here?
Are you able to share what you're doing with the WNBA in 2025 or not yet?
We have lots of exciting things planned. So, but one of the things that we will be doing with the WNBA is looking more at also how we reach people across college campuses and think about that audience, and not just with the WNBA, but with Opill in general. College students is a great opportunity to help educate people about their choices of contraception and where they may be making, first-time decisions or new decisions for themselves. And so we're excited to see where that takes us.
What has been the most surprising thing that you've either heard from the audience, the market, since launch, or like response?
Great question. Most surprising thing.
Sorry, going off script again.
Sorry?
That's it. I'm sorry, I'm going off script again.
She went off script. I think I think we needed a little more education than we originally thought. It's been surprising. Like, everyone was so excited. And, obviously from the reaction in the room today, people are excited. But we're realizing that there really is a need for even more education.
Yeah, definitely a need for more education. And I think, you asked earlier about misinformation. And I think, contraception, it can be a hot topic. And I think we thought there might be more backlash than there was, but there really wasn't. I mean, I mentioned, obviously, the healthcare community has been incredibly supportive. But overall, I mean, I think it's just been so widely received as such a great thing. But now needing to educate people more. And I think what people don't necessarily know is Opill has been around for 50 years, but not under that name. And so I think that people necessarily don't know that this is an ingredient and a formulation that has been on the RX market for 50 years, right? And so it is very well studied and clinically proven. And so helping people understand that education, both connect the dots, that over-the-counter birth control and Opill is just as good or efficacious as anything you would get with a prescription from a doctor, and then helping them understand what a progesterone-only pill means and what the side effects or the impact or the way in which they take it might differ from what they're used to.
And that actually leads to another question around working with doctors, because, of course, the whole idea of Opill is providing accessibility and ease to get without going to a doctor. But how are you working with doctors now, and do you plan to work with them to help educate and provide that level of trust and credibility?
We do. So the day that we announced that we had shipped, which was back in March of this year, the largest association of gynecologists was having an annual meeting, and news was shared in the room that Opill had announced it was shipping, and the room erupted in applause. So that great to see. And we exhibited at some conferences this past year with healthcare professionals. We'll continue to do that. We also, as I mentioned earlier, we do a lot of influencer work, and we've done influencer work with HCPs that can help people understand more about Opill. And we look at it in different areas, right? So we've looked at physicians, assistants, and nurse practitioners. We've looked at gynecologists. We've looked at doctors who specialize in rural healthcare, which is, again, a place where a lot of people might have difficulty getting to a doctor to get a prescription. And so being able to get Opill shipped to them without a prescription is a huge benefit. And we're continuing to think about how do we make sure we are leveraging the expertise and the trust that the healthcare professional brings without, and while using that as a way to endorse that, the huge benefit of Opill is the access and the convenience it provides people who previously hadn't have it, or people who are afraid to use their parents' insurance to go see a doctor, or just, again, people who have not had access or not had the opportunity to get the healthcare that they need where they live.
You mentioned working with influencers and, of course, working with both HCP, healthcare professional, and non-HCP. When you were looking at your influencer options, like what was some of the criteria that you used to select influencers, both HCP and non?
Well, we have a lot of criteria. We have a lot of
short list.
Yes. I think really when we were looking people who, obviously we felt like were credible with the audience and would have that credibility in talking about healthcare and talking about contraception and Opill. And we've used a wide variety of influencers, as across healthcare professional and consumers. But really wanted to make sure that people understood just the overwhelming significance of the access and convenience that Opill provides, and the ability to go get it anywhere at any time, right? And then can use their style and their authentic, what's authentic to them and their following, to share those messages in the right way to engage their audience.
Melissa, what about your team when you're looking at different social activations? Like what criteria was your team using, and is it changing?
It hasn't. I think part of what we're trying to do is ensure that we are working through the funnel. So we've talked a lot about education, and that is absolutely a critical need. But we also, our approach was sort of three-pronged, and we called it engage, educate, and enable. So in terms of engaging, we needed to make sure that people knew about the product, right? So sometimes our social strategy was just about leveraging social, a channel that women are looking to for information, particularly in this age group, to ensure that they know that the product is even out there and available. So a lot of our strategy, particularly in the first couple of months, we're still only in the first 6 months, but very early, was about ensuring that we maximized our reach among women between the ages of 18 and 44. So that was a critical part. We also leveraged social as a way to make sure that people knew where to get the product, right? Because you're used to having to go to your doctor, you're used to having to get a prescription, and we needed people to know that, like, you can go to Target, you can go to Walmart, you can go to Amazon and get your pill. So, it was about making sure that we had all the parts of the funnel ready to go. And as we've moved through the year, we sort of changed the pressure up and down the funnel as the campaign progressed.
Interesting, because I was brainstorming my next question because I'm going off script again. I know, keeping me on your toes. In terms of where you're seeing where people are purchasing, because I think that was a big question before that. I remember we were sitting in Grand Rapids in your office, and we were talking about where do we think people are going to actually be buying this product the most? Is it an e-com push? Is it in store? So, of course, not saying tell me your sales, but like where are you seeing the behavior in terms of where people are actually buying?
We definitely have an over-index for e-com as compared to other over-the-counter healthcare products. And that makes sense, right? And you can get it shipped to you from any retailer or from our own website. It comes in discrete packaging. So there's clearly a benefit there. And again, when we're talking about people who can't get to a doctor, they also probably don't have, they may not even have a Walmart near them where they can go and see a pharmacist or go to a clinic there. So that doesn't surprise us that there's a heavy over-index on e-com, but still, brick and mortar is massive, and it's still the lion's share of the business. But when you look at it across the board, it is compared to other healthcare products over-indexing.
And then, Melissa, thinking about some of the trends that you and your team are seeing in the media marketplace, Are you seeing a need to shift your media mix or channel mix going into 2025 or even now, just based on the trends in the market and then also the trends with the customer and the product?
I wouldn't say we're shifting it significantly. I would say that we are continuing to refine. We are looking for ways to continue to leverage the partnership with the WNBA. We're also looking for ways to make sure that we're reaching women of color, because that's a group that have historically lacked access to effective birth control. So we're trying to make sure that in the choices that we're making, we're showing up in places that those women can see our advertising. So we are increasing our pressure against partners that can cover the multicultural audience. We definitely have Spanish language as part of the mix, and that's been really important too, because that's an audience that we're seeing a lot of traction with.
And then thinking about education 2.0, like what do you think, because you mentioned at the beginning, like more education is going to be needed, continuous education. Do you think your education strategy, which kind of overlaps with media strategy as well, but how do you think you might need to educate differently or just in a different way?
Again, I think it's less about doing things in a different way. I think it's building on what we started. I think it's really important to remember this product we've been advertising this product for 6 months, right? So
I know it feels
I know
longer.
it feels we've
longer.
been talking about it for a long time. But, we're still really, it's not even been a full year yet. So I think there's still a lot of awareness building that we need to do. We're going to continue to look for ways that we can drive that. Again, ensuring that we're reaching all of those audiences. We're going to think about, should we be varying the message? Because the reason that you need a birth control pill, or the message to someone who's just entering the category who has never taken any kind of birth control before, is probably very different than the message to someone who is currently on an RX.
Yeah, and I think we talk about that a lot with our content strategy. So we know that there's been a lot of questions through our social channels about side effects. So we've increased the amount of content we're sharing there to help people know what to expect, especially in the first 3 months when they're trying the pill for the first time. And trying to do that in different formats, both with our own branded content, but also using creators to share out that information if they have their own experiences that they want to share. So that's one element we focus, providing more content to make sure we are educating people. And then in social listening as well, I think we were talking earlier about social listening. So we certainly have tools that help us with that, but we also, across our teams, whether it's brand or agency, are looking at what we're hearing online. What are people messaging us? What are they commenting? What are people saying on all of the social platforms? What are the ratings and reviews saying? And how does that then help us inform the questions people still have that we need to make sure we address?
That's right. And I think as Evelyn mentioned, we do not, Publicis does not implement their influencer strategy, but we do work very closely with the PR agency. And I think that's been a really great learning this year too, is finding ways that we can all work together to drive the business. I think as we go into 2025, we're going to be looking for more ways to leverage paid media to amplify that, and to create a content calendar to show up at the right times and places.
Makes sense. And we have one more question because we're at time. What is next 2025, and what are you most excited about with this launch?
Well, lots of things are next. That some things I can't talk about yet, but I'm just so excited for just what the monumental, incredible, game-changing moment this is for people in the U.S. and what that means for reproductive healthcare. So really just excited to try and make as many people as possible aware that Opill is here and that this category is here, and it's going to completely change the way people take care of their reproductive journey in the U.S. So just continuing to do groundbreaking stuff.
Yeah. You, Melissa, anything?
No, I agree. It's exciting. It's amazing. It's been an incredible ride. Evelyn has been an amazing partner. And so we're just really excited as we head into 2025 to continue growing awareness of this amazing product.
And more stuff to come as well.
And more stuff to come. We're launching GoodRx e-com functionality for Opill hopefully next month. So check it out. But thank you both. This was great. And you're both great partners. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.